Welcome back to the Arrows podcast. Today we have Tiffany Fraser. She is a close personal friend of ours, and she is the Chief of Staff for Street Soccer USA and the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce. Tiffany, thanks for joining us.
We've known Tiffany Fraser since she was really at the start of your career. Like you would call that kind of
it was start-ish, second job out of school, kind of thing.
And we've been friends with you as like your career has blossomed into, I think, what you're calling now like a executive consultant, where you're working with a lot of really great organizations in the city of Sacramento. And I would say that you're one of the first people on a short list, at least, of like when organizations want things to be done well, things to be done on time, but also for things to be done with like a good energy where like everybody's kind of bought in. I think that's something I've noticed about being friends with you, but also working with you over the past 8 years. But that's always been a part of your calling card. So can you kind of explain what it does look like to be an executive consultant, and maybe what makes that different from, being like a project manager or a product manager or a brand manager? Like, what does that actually entail?
Earlier on in my career, it was a little bit more project manager focused, logistics manager, business relationship. And it was a little bit more skill focused. What I've learned and kind of tried to analyze through professional coaches and mentors is what actually did I deliver and what did that look like, and where the value was that I couldn't see, and I couldn't see that most of the time. So the feedback that I got from mentors, from coaches, was that a lot of what I was delivering was value that, in particular, small businesses or nonprofits that I was working with, what they were getting was much more of that cultural piece, that organizational development. How do we create the buy-in? Where some of those pieces were actually the elements that were propelling the organizations and the groups I was working with. So as I kind of tried to understand that feedback or lean into that feedback, where my career kind of took me was to being on executive teams, because that was what executives were looking for. That was the missing ingredient that they couldn't really find.
What does that process entail? When you're playing that role of executive consultant, what are the main processes you kind of work through for any given project or company?
Tend to work very closely with the primary leader of the organization and the team that's involved in that. So the executive team, and it could be the CEO, the CFO, the COO. There are some conversations that I don't even know why I'm involved in. But I have been very lucky to be asked to be involved in those conversations, because the CEOs that I have worked with had the foresight, or at least, they were CEOing the way, you should CEO, where you don't know about this software implementation, but you're going to ask a question that's going to be important to people that are impacted by this software implementation. And you're going to see that different than our CFO is going to see that. I've fallen in this it's a comfortable space for me where I'm being asked to give input on things. And it's taught me to ask for input from people outside of what I think the immediate grouping I should be asking for input is. It's caused me to be like, let me get this media person's input on this logistics project, or, and perhaps we might get to a different idea or a better idea. And
what I'm kind of hearing is that like this kind of nebulous gray area skill that you're talking about is like sort of like an executive dot connector. You know what I mean? Like between, on the surface level, like non-connected parts or like teams, and then you're the one making those connections.
Well, what and why that comes to play is because I come from a very team culture oriented thought process.
100%.
I tend to try and build relationships and culture that creates buy-in But also in that process, I understand a little bit more about the staff as an entirety, and then also where and how people can contribute and when that makes a lot of sense. And so it does end up connecting dots, but it's also, it's not because I'm trying to connect dots.
No, yeah.
Because I'm just like,
It's dots that people didn't even know were there.
because I do this, and it's an interesting timing, because as my network has expanded in the last decade or whatever.
Whatever.
Decade. I have these amazing friends. I'm like, okay, I'm going to send this text. Cheyenne, can you meet me at this time? Quinn, can you meet me at this time? Like, I love both you guys, and I think we can have a really good lunch. And, and also you came up because I know you said something about this, you said something about that. When maybe it's not like I'm hired to do a culture thing, but I'm kind of like programmed in this way to try and create like optimal situations for people.
Well, so much of culture is like cleaning up communication between teams anyway. Like,
and having relationship
exactly.
with people, though.
So that kind of does make sense that would be like a natural progression of what a healthy culture looks like, is that now these dots that may have been buried by poor communication are now like starting to like...
Or hierarchy, right?
Yes,
like,
yes.
So-and-so would never talk to so-and-so.
100%. Because of like this unhealthy like communication structure that they had, which led to a poor culture. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really important thing to touch on. It's something I've seen you do really well, is create those cultures. What are some other things you look for, either like red flags or green flags, when you're trying to create those cultures?
I don't know. There was a mentor that pushed me to always think about what is the audience that you're speaking to or considering, and take myself out of just my position and think about like, what do you think the CEO's looking for? What are you looking for? Those are kind of questions that I ask. Like, what does success look like? What do they think success looks like? That may be totally accurate and totally right, what CEO thinks success looks like. But perhaps there are other things that could contribute to said like outcome, right? And so I try and think about, and I try and understand, what is every audience's ideal outcome, and what do they currently think is the key ingredients to that outcome, and is there anything missing, or are there any blind spots? When I consider it in that way, or when I ask those questions, sometimes I'm able to identify those blind spots, right?
It kind of like hammers home one of my greatest learnings from you over the last, when we first met, actually, even till now. It's like, are you asking the right questions? Like, are you asking the questions that are going to lead you to actually uncover what the real result you want to be? Because you might
uncover people's motivations too.
Exactly.
Because the motivation of Lisa, administrative assistant, might be different than the motivation of, Monisha, CEO. Like, but the steps and the process, it might look the same, it might look different, but their motivations don't have to be the same for them to both contribute to getting to point B. It's important to understand what people's try and think about that. But oftentimes people have very different motivations, but the same point B. So if you understand that, you can leverage that, and you can utilize that, and even be okay with that amongst the team.
I mean, I think what you said aligns perfectly earlier about finding everyone's success, like what success looks like to that person. You have to know their motivation to find that answer. And that another one of my favorite Tiffany-isms is there's a yes here somewhere. Like, there's a yes here for you somewhere. Like, what does it take? What's a yes for you?
In 2023, it sounds a little worse than it did in 2015, for sure.
I know. Yeah.
There's a yes in here somewhere.
I know.
But
I think the other
she
thing
meant
is,
well.
Let me eliminate all reasons why you might say no.
Yeah. And
that's hilarious. Stop. I just said it differently.
Here's the thing.
Better. That might be worse.
No, the reason I think it's still great is because it's rooted in finding what motivates that person.
It's rooted in wanting to understand.
Yeah, because again, this is all coming back to what success looks like for that person. That's what that yes is.
Yes. And so here's the thing, like sometimes I've done jobs that I did not really want to do and I was not very good at the time. And I talked to people about this with when they're looking to do board experience, like get on a board. They don't know what to do and they don't know, and they, might be early in their career. And I'll tell them, what are some skills or experiences you're not getting to do in your current job? And don't sabotage a organization, but, maybe see if there's an opportunity for you to learn those skills. And if it's, say, a nonprofit that has nobody to do their social media and you've been wanting to get into marketing and you're willing to do the research and learn and you're willing to offer your time and, what skills you have, like that's a win-win for both people. And that is one way to approach board experience and life experience and whatever.
Outside of figuring out like what the key players' motivations are, what are some other like key questions people should be asking when trying to get from point A to B to C and get everybody to the finish line? What are some of those key questions that you like to ask?
Here's one question that a mentor told me to consider always is, like, how do you want someone to feel about whatever set experience is about to...
Like the people that's working...
Literally anyone along the process, right? Like your audience that is consuming the thing, your people that you're doing the process with. What do you want their lasting notes of the thing to be?
Which is different than their motivation specifically. It's like more of like what their present feeling is.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's totally different. How they feel, how you make someone feel on a thing, on a commercial. Were they represented? Did they feel connected to it? If they're a part of the staff and you're contracting with a company or vendor to do with the project, how does your staff feel about the decisions you make, about the teams you choose? I think it's a pause-worthy moment. There's a lot. I don't
think enough people ask that at all. Like, how do you want this to feel? Because I think what's interesting is with your mindset, it's like this shit's gonna happen anyway. Like, we're gonna get this done, dude. Yeah. Like, because I'm in the building.
The execution piece is like not a question to me.
Yeah, it's gonna happen, and I think that confidence like breeds into the culture. But I think it is interesting. Like, if we're gonna be banging this out together, how do we all want to feel along the way? I think that's so important.
So one thing that I saw personally that I was a part of that was super exciting for me to be involved with was building this Street Soccer USA park here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Can you speak to how all the skills we're talking about played into that process?
And also, can you kind of explain what the space is for anybody that hasn't seen it?
The Wikipedia answer is, this park is, mainly a result of we've been doing street soccer in Sacramento at locations like Title I schools, at locations like low-income housing, community centers, but not had our own kind of physical space. And we've always believed and known, one, from a community asset standpoint, that having kind of your home field, like any team that is like, this is our home field. There's a ownership, there's a thing that comes with that. And when we considered, street soccer having a home field, a home base, that one, there's like an office for our functions, but two, it's, being able to have a very safe space that our participants can call their own, even if we do practices still at their schools, at their transitional shelters, wherever. We can organize opportunities for them to have a home base and feel like they have a home, especially because for our transitional age youth, our folks that are moving from rehab to transitional shelters to semi-permanent housing to maybe Section 8 housing and then obtaining their own house. Like, they're bouncing around from places. So to have a home base is a really important thing. So that's kind of one aspect, considering our players always first. But secondly, from from a just social enterprise standpoint, it creates this opportunity to, host events, have rentals, have leagues that can allow us to be closer to self-sufficient. So that was some of the thought process in, okay, wait, if you have a home base that is very thoughtful in location and that becomes a safe space, a hub for resources, a connecting space, you also can then bring in the community that maybe is not knowingly in need. And knowingly in need is a key thing, because we have met a lot of players who have benefited from the resources we know about because they have found themselves in need. So we've created a culture that is safe enough and based in trust that we've been able to be resources to people that maybe didn't know that they needed resources, right? So those are some of the considerations. And then the sustainability piece, like, yes, we can get grants, we can, get donors, we can to sustain our nonprofit operations, but also having this social enterprise model, right? Those are some of the elements, but then the thoughtfulness of the location. So this particular, the Union Pacific Street Soccer USA Park here in Sacramento, it's on X and A Street, but it's right next to the oldest projects in Sacramento, where we have done programming for over, 6 years. We've done programming there. Quinn, you've coached there. And the walkability aspect to those projects was key. Like, we weren't going to drop this in an area where we didn't have relationships, community, any of that. So that was really critical. But it's also very accessible to the community from the doing leagues, rentals, all of that. We have the park here. We have 2 mini pitches here, about the size of a basketball court with walls. There's a rule that music has to be playing when people walk up. I am largely the enforcer of that.
DJ Tiff,
Yeah, no, exactly. And I've had to really manage my interests in putting on my favorite music when I walk up here, but just to create that inviting vibe, culture, everything. So, and we have nights where we play different, we have an Afghan girls program that comes here, and we're playing music that is relevant for them, that they want to listen to. So yes, we do leagues. Yes, we do rentals, but we also do youth programming. We do demographic specific programming. We do girls, programming. We do birthday parties. We've had bull riding here. It's just a space to bring community together, and it really has done that. So that is my very long answer to what is this space that we're in.
Yeah, no, I love the park here, and I was personally a part of building it, which was super exciting for me to be a part of. How does all the skills we were talking about earlier, how did that come into play when you were putting the park together?
The pieces that showed up most in this case study and this experience were probably, certainly a resourcefulness, because it took quite a bit of manpower to do it. It wasn't just Lisa and I didn't just do this. We knew we wanted this to be a space that felt like it belonged to the community. And so we included the community in that process. So when we needed to have volunteers to offload a truck, we went first to our pickup soccer community, our friends that we knew would come here, that would be a part of it, people that have supported street soccer, our families that were involved, because sometimes for some of those groups, it's not often they get that opportunity to be involved in something. You might think call this organization that can pump out 80 volunteers that maybe do or don't know what's going on, but we have players that 2 years later play in our leagues that they remember building this park, and they feel ownership and they feel comfortable being here. They feel involved. Same with our street soccer players. And so,
yeah, I mean, if anyone gets a chance to just drive by and see the space, it is a marvel. I mean, for Quinn and I to know that this now exists because of our friends, that's pretty surreal. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, this is legit insane that this lady that we would just do silly stuff with. You're a person. You're a little lady.
goddamn lady.
You're the lady.
Yes.
No, but we would just do silly stuff and just be
We had
like,
Nerf wars.
Yeah, we had like Nerf wars, and I'm like, yo, that person that we would just like shoot Nerf guns at in our workplace, just like built this whole area.
But it was built off the same culture that we
100%.
built together, and
But-
the same approach.
It's the same approach of like, okay, cool, like these things need to get done, but like we're gonna have fun along the way. And I think that's so huge. That's something that I've brought into our team, like super big. It's been a super big deal for me to do that, because, hey, like capitalism is gonna exist, man. We're all gonna need some jobs. But if we're gonna like be on this little boat together, like we might as well, one, make sure everyone has the right seat on this like little weird job vessel.
Yeah.
But also like let's try to have a good time while we're doing it.
The interesting thing about the Nerf wars we had, and the interesting thing about
Which requires its own podcast, by the way.
the whole nother thing. I wish we had a like ring camera in there. We could have captured some. But there were skills that showed up.
What are you talking
Look,
about?
I'm gonna bring this back. There are skills that showed up. Look, Cheyenne is kind of an assassin in some ways that I didn't always see behind an email. This is the same thing that happens with soccer. This is the same thing that happens. I see people show up. I see Quinn show up as a solid ass teammate. Not that you don't in work, but you show up in a
Different way.
in a different way. And also the thing that you see about sports or something physical, you don't always have to articulate what you're doing, right? So there are some people that their love language and how they operate is acts of service, right? You'll run back on defense for me, but maybe you're not communicating like, Tiff, I got your back on this email. Like, don't worry, I know that person was being whatever. Like, so that's what I love about putting your teams in situations to surface different skills that you're not seeing in the day-to-day.
Yeah, we had a similar situation right now with our team member Trey. You usually see him, he's like a pretty like soft-spoken guy. Just kind of keeps to himself. And now he's like one of like our lead salespeople in our Birmingham office. Because we were in like a networking event, and boy, did these people flock to this cat. Like, and we were like, what was going on? And he was just like working it. And I don't even think he realized, but putting him in that situation where he might not have been put himself in, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Kind of to stretch yourself.
Yeah.
You just never know what people's like superpowers actually are until they are in a situation where they have to use it.
Totally. Well, and I think as a leader, considering your teams or the people you're around in that way, and always from a like strengths-based perspective. And I remember the first time I did Strengths Finders, I was in a cohort in a leadership program, and there were some people that had some strengths that I had never even heard the word before. And I remember looking at other people's strengths and just feeling like a couple people we could probably do without.
Relax.
Well, I didn't know what they were. I legit had not. I was like, I don't feel like that's involved with what we need to get done. But part of the process was learning about each other's people's strengths. And that was one of the best things I had ever done. One, and I always care about people, but I became a true believer in the fact that everyone has strengths that they're bringing to the table. Now, some may not be as obvious to me,
To you. Yes.
or to you, or to one, but it doesn't. There's no world in which this person shows up with no strengths. No world. They're showing up with strengths. I just may not know what they were. So it made me, especially with people that it was not obvious to me, it made me very, very interested. And it made me think my next steps might be to better understand what their strengths might be so that we can better understand if we had to work together, or because if I was this confused, there's a good chance they're that confused about me. And this is that uncomfortable for them too. So maybe think about it differently.
As I've gotten older, because I used to hold a similar
No, I know.
energy where it was like, there's only a certain level of us that are, we're top performers, But like, no, everybody is a top performer in their own role. Kind of maturing in a leadership sense is realizing that top performers can come in different ways, and like
It's different ways that they can contribute.
exactly,
For sure.
exactly,
It might look different in year 1 than it does in year 3.
100%.
And as you learn more about strengths finders or some of these other things, oftentimes your top 3 kind of stay pretty top 3. Your 4, 5, 6 might interchange depending on if you have kids or not, and it's drawing out different strengths from you, or your job is a little bit different. But no doubt people have strengths. Understanding that about them allows you to maybe better interact as a leader. If you're responsible for placing them, maybe better place them. And then you also might then have a language by which you can communicate with them about what they're doing, why they're doing, and you can really nerd out on this. And what do your strengths look like at their best? What do they look like at their
At the end of the day, though, it's just more just like not having like preconceived notions whether this person is like valuable to the squad or not. You just might not. It should be more of like an inward facing thing of like, have you done your work to see their value also, so, as a leader.
And some of the better leaders are just able to recognize those things.
Yeah. And that's a skill you have to develop as you know.
You have to be intentional about it.
100%.
You have to be interested in it.
To do the work.
Not solely interested in particular outcome, but interested in maximizing. And also if you're interested in creating opportunities for people, if it's appropriate for your business. Because as people mature, they like different strengths emerge or skills.
Tiffany, there was a ton of insight in this conversation so far. As always, you're always dropping gems on Quinn and I. So first off, I want to thank you for your time, for being on the podcast. I know there's a lot of threads that we will probably pull on more in future conversations that we introduce here. Maybe tell people like what's the best ways to get in contact with you in case they want to work with you, and maybe let the people know like what you're working on, like what's near and dear to your heart project wise in the near future. I know you guys got some big stuff coming along.
Yeah, 2023 is a little busy. But best way to stay in touch with me, Tiffany at streetsoccerusa.org. While I do other projects and consulting, that is from a sense of near and dear to my heart. That's where you will probably find me for the foreseeable future. And, in terms of work and interest, I'm super interested in helping organizations, people just maximize what they want to do. And it looks a lot of different ways. Coming up this summer here in Sacramento, July 8th through the 15th, we are hosting the Homeless World Cup. So by we, Street Soccer USA and Sacramento State are hosting the Homeless World Cup for the first time ever in the U.S. here in Sacramento. It's going to be phenomenal. There will be 500 athletes from around the world showing up here and getting to celebrate and really shine light on kind of the hope within some of the most hopeless situations, and for all of them at one point homeless situations. So it'll all be presented through the beautiful game, through soccer. So July 8th through 15th, that'll be what's happening. But I will say thank you to Josh and Quinn for hanging out with me for a little bit. We've been having some good conversations for almost a decade, and I'm sure we have some exciting ones to come.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Arrows podcast. On behalf of Quinn and I just want to say thank you again, and look out for more episodes.